All right, welcome back to another episode of Surly Talk Sports. It's been a big week on the paddock, but also off it as well, in particular for our headline sponsor in the TAB. If you haven't already checked out their new app, you haven't done the updates, jump on your phone, update the app, or head along to their website, www.tab.co.nz, and check it out. It's fair to say the feedback from all of you who've been firing it through to me has been extremely positive. Loving the new options, plenty of features to sink your teeth into, including the duos around the NRL, which I am really loving. Fair to say, options are plenty now for all your sport too, so I'll be having a massive flutter this weekend. Already gone 1 from 1 on the new app as well, undefeated, so fingers crossed that momentum can carry over and she can be a massive year of punting. But shout out to them, really appreciate their support, so get around them if you don't already. Of course, last week Northcote had the bye, so it was a chance to freshen up, rest a couple rigs and get into some bonding. We actually shot up north to Matakana as a team and ran through the old army course, which was bloody good fun. Certainly tested a lot of the lads. We had to carry around a 20-kilo jerry can between our mini teams as well. Good chance to display some leadership, a bit of patience. You couldn't move through the obstacles until all of you in your group had done them. So it was great stuff, really. Lots of teamwork on display. Fair to say the lads got pretty muddy too. Some of the obstacles, crawling under nets through puddles of mud and water. She was pretty grim stuff, but it was bloody fun at the same time and a very beneficial exercise. Then following that, ripped into some lawn bowls down at Northcote Bowls Club, and then a bit of a session at one of the lads' flats too. So fair to say morale's high. The boys are bonded and ready to rip in for hopefully a big performance this weekend against Helensville, the Ville, up in the Ville too. So can't wait for that. Plenty to get through on today's show though, of course. Unfortunately, ANZAC Day didn't go the way we'd hoped as Warriors fans, so we've got a lot to chew the fat on there. Super Rugby NBA playoffs continue to heat up. Got a jam-packed Q&A and of course some punting tips to hopefully have green ticks on your bet slips over the weekend. So let's rip the band-aid off and get amongst it. How good? Big fizz. NRL, and that's the great thing about Rugby League. Every week we are dished up with some fresh talking points and you can never predict what is going to happen. 7 days is like an eternity in the greatest game of all. If you told me Paul Kent would get tossed into a tree after a bit of an altercation outside of a bar, believed you. But that's exactly what happened to the old fella. Fair to say he wouldn't back down. Clearly he'd had a big day on the Darren Frothiers, a few too many better bears. Someone said something to him as they walked by on the side of the street, and the old boy, he wasn't having a bar of it. Went at the bloke despite others trying to talk him out of it. Ultimate price. I think the bloke who tossed him could be up for about 6 weeks at the NRL judiciary due to a dangerous throw, and maybe even the tree. That gets done for at least 4 weeks as well for dangerous contact. But in all seriousness, Kenty's clearly got some issues on the grog. This is not the first time something like this has surfaced. Good to see Fox at least stand him down. He wasn't on 360 this week. James Graham stepping in instead, and I have to say, old Jimmer, he did bloody well. So maybe this is the end of Kenty. I don't think many players will be coming out appalled at that decision if that's the way it goes. No one stood up for the old bloke. Of course, he's the first one to throw shade at players whenever they do something wrong. Clearly, this is a throwing stones in glass houses type of scenario. This time, Kenty, he's the one who's fucked up, and he is going to pay the price. I must say, Sunday morning, woke up pretty dusty, sent this video from a few of you into the DMs, and it did bring me a bit of a laugh. You couldn't help but have a chuckle watching this one back. Not my favourite character, that's for sure, in our game. There's some great journos out there. For me, Kenty, though, he's just one that winds me up the wrong way, so I won't be sad to see him gone. At the same time, though, clearly has issues with alcohol and other things, so fingers crossed he can get that sorted and come out of this altercation on the other side. Shout outs to Luke Carey, not like Kenty, but a similar sounding last name. At least it starts with a K. The Roosters playmaker who has decided to call it quits at the end of this year and call time on his career. An underrated footballer in my opinion. I think he's played about 14 years now at the top level. Of course, won back-to-back chips in 2018 and 2019. Also picked up a Clive in the 2018 grand final. Played a couple tests for the Kangaroos, a couple for Ireland as well, which was a bit of a spanner in the works, and I think he wore the sky blue on one occasion too. He's a bloody tough footballer. He's always one of the more smaller blokes on the paddock, but he's not afraid to go into war. And gee, I think he's played only about 147 games in those 14 years. He's really battled with injury. He's a tough character though, and a really talented playmaker, so it is sad to see him draw the end of his career. What it does do for the Roosters though is it really opens up their cap. They have about $3.5 to $4 million coming off the books now at the end of this year. Crichton, not re-signed. Got Jared Waerea-Hargreaves, Joey Manu, Joseph Suaalii all departing. A club like that with that much money in the bank is a scary prospect for every other NRL team. Heading to Bondi to play for the Chooks is a big lure for many players alone, let alone if you can chuck some big numbers, a couple zeros on the end of some contracts, then they are going to be a massive presence come recruitment time. It is interesting though to see who they do go after, because at the moment, players off contract for 2025, there is not a lot of big household names coming off the books for these clubs, so clearly they're going to have to convince some players to get releases, get up to their usual tricks. Interested to see how this one plays out for the boys from Bondi. A powerhouse club like that, they're going to want to be contenders again next year, so I'm interested to see who they try lure. And good news for the Chooks as well, I see Brandon Smith has taken up his player option for next year. Hasn't got much media around this one, but I believe the Cheese has signed the dotted line and said he will go again at the Chooks next year, playing some good code in his last few weeks. Probably the best he's played since he's joined the Roosters, to be fair, so that is a massive get for them. Sunia Taruva, he is off to the Tigers for 3 years, and a massive grab for Benji's lads. They probably paid overs to get him, but I do think this will be worth it. He's shown this year he's a heck of a talent, an elite try scorer. He can play centre, he can play wing, he can play fullback, he's versatile, and he's just also at the start of his NRL career too. It did get me thinking though, geez, the Panthers, they're really starting to shed some talent now, and if you look at the players they've lost over the past kind of 2 to 3 years, there's some of the biggest names in our game. Could they be in trouble in 2025? They're losing James Fisher-Harris, Jerome Luai and Taruva. You add to that, last year they lost Crichton and Spencer Leniu. The year before they lost Kikau, Burton and Api Kotosau. The fact they are still regarded as the best team in the competition when you list all those names on paper is pretty wild. But this was always going to happen with a salary cap managed sport. Of course, you can't afford to keep everyone on your books, especially once these players, they grow from rookies into superstars in the game. But this is really going to put that Western Sydney system to the test. They've been claiming for the last few years that they have the best juniors going round, and to their credit, they've always had that next man up, regardless of who they lose. They've found someone to slot in that position. But I do wonder if JFH, Luai and Taruva, if that's going to be 3 too many, and the Panthers, they could be staring down the barrel of a couple years where they'll still be one of the top sides in the comp, but not quite the pedestal, the 3-time premiers that we have seen them be over the last couple years. And saying that, guys like Paul Alamotti, Dane Laurie and co, they do have some depth in that squad already. Every time they've been given a crack, they've taken it with both hands. Something interesting to watch though over the next couple years and see how it plays out. Can Penrith keep this run up? Because shit, their talent is being poached left, right and centre. And then probably the biggest story that's emerged this week in the NRL, Jason Demetriou, he's been fired from Souths, effective immediately. Ben Hornby coming in as interim coach until the end of the year, and now the stage looks set for one of the returns of arguably the greatest coach to ever coach in the NRL, in the old boy Wayne Bennett. Shout out to JD, shit, he hasn't had it easy, and to be fair, I think many Souths fans have been calling for this for at least the last couple of years. He's only won 5 of his last 21 games at the helm. To think this time last year, Souths was sitting pretty at the top of the table. Everyone was saying they're going to go all the way and win the comp. Now they're sitting in dead last. With a roster like that, you shouldn't be sitting down the bottom of the ladder. Clearly, there's some internal beef as well. It looks like guys like Cam Murray, Damien Cook aren't happy with the way Cody Walker, Latrell and co have been treated. They haven't been held accountable for their form, and instead, it's been lads like Cookie getting dropped and not those other big names. So clearly there's a divide in the camp. We saw Sammy Burgess leave at the back end of last year. Josh Mansour come out and say that Demetriou was a horrible communicator. So the writing's been on the wall for a while, and now Do we see Uncle Wayne go back to South, a club where he had so much success? And it definitely would make sense to me, of course. This year is his last year at the Finns. Christian Wolf waiting in the wings, ready to take over this team. Wayne at 74. If he was to go to another club, he would want it to be a club with a stacked roster. When you look at guys like Jack White and Colin Matangi, Cody Walker, Latrell Mitchell, Cook, Murray, they certainly have the playing group to be able to entice a Wayne back in the mixer. He loves a bit of a fix-it job as well. He'll get massive credit for turning them around. Could he be the guy to lure Sam Burgess back in a couple of years' time? Maybe Sam could take over from Wayne. Shit, would that be a feel-good story? But tough times for Souths fans. No doubt they're probably happy to see the back end of Jason, although you do have to feel a little sorry for him. For me now, it's time for the players to take some accountability. If these shit results continue under Ben Hornby, then there'll be no excuses. You'll know it's not the coaching staff, and the players will have to wear that one. So watch this space. They've got a massive test this weekend, taking on the Panthers. Will we see a big lift off the back of the sacking, or will we see the same old Souths? It's going to be interesting to watch. Your two big performances from last week for me, the two teams that really stood out off the back of last week's action, you'd have to say it was the Roosters and the Melbourne Storm, so hats off to them. I thought Sammy Walker was outstanding for the Chooks, and for me, this was probably the one game where we saw that it was his team, not Luke Keary's, and it was interesting to see Luke Keary talk on that at the aftermatch as well. He said, "I'm happy for Walker to just pull the strings, I'll sit back and play second fiddle." So often throughout their halves pairing, they've actually played better without each other. Walker, he's been outstanding whenever Keary's not there, and vice versa, so it was good to see them both play a solid game, the Roosters to be firing on all cylinders, and I thought young Sam Walker really put his hand up and showed that potential that has been spoken about for so many years now. Then jumping across to Melbourne, and hats off to Cam Munster. I think this was his best game all year, to be honest. He's looked a bit flat coming back from that groin injury. Many people could see he was really battling to get through games, but this was that performance where he stood up, put his hand up. Just happens to be when they're getting closer to Origin as well, which as a Blues fan really pisses me off. But this was vintage Mad Dog, and when you chuck in him in the mixer with a Hughes, with a Grant, with a Pappenhausen, that Melbourne spine is still so deadly, and they will 100% be sniffing around come finals time. Then your final talking point, and this is one I know a lot of you tune in for, is to hear me wax lyrical week in and week out about the mighty One New Zealand Warriors. Of course, hosted our first ANZAC clash in a long time, 9 years back, 2015, when we took on the Titans at Mount Smarts. Was a bit of a repeat of that game, and unfortunately the result, it repeated itself as well, with the Titans getting up, pulling off the ambush, and really putting a massive dampener on our ANZAC Day celebrations. I've got to say, shout out to all at Mount Smart. I thought the day itself, the off-field celebration, was second to none. We had the helicopters, we had the bands, the full ceremony, the last post. It was really emotional and moving, and the stage was set for what was going to be a massive game. A sold-out crowd, everyone with their poppies, the Defence Force out in numbers, mix and mingling with the fans. Everyone was in high spirits, and I do love me some ANZAC footy, so fingers crossed this was not a one-off. Melbourne Storm, if you're listening, get your ass over here and take us on as you should have done this year. But then once the whistle blew, things slowly started to go downhill, and unfortunately it resulted in the Titans leaving Auckland Airport with 2 points in their carry-on luggage. So where did things go wrong? I think defensively it's been a bit of a nightmare 2-week period for us. We missed 43 tackles against the Titans. As a team, that's just simply not good enough. We were poor on our goal line defense, and we're really struggling to defend our errors at the moment, which I thought is something we did so well last year. Often you'd see us spill a ball in our own half, tackle 3, tackle 4, but we'd have the ability to just get down to our goal line and then defend out the rest of the set, absorb their pressure, turn them away, and that would be a massive momentum and confidence killer for the other team. This year though, if we're making errors in our own half, unfortunately we're not able to back that up with a massive defensive shift. First 6 rounds, we're the best D in the comp, so we certainly know that this squad is capable of producing great efforts there, and after a big week on the training training paddock this week. I do think we will see it come back, but plenty of kinks to iron out on that side of the ball, and no doubt that has been a massive focus for Webby & Co this week as they look to improve heading into Newcastle. I also thought we were poor around the ruck, another area that we've dominated over the last year or so. The Titans, they were getting quick play the balls for large periods of that game, which then stretches our defence all across the paddock. So I'll be looking for a big improvement in that area too, particularly when we don't have Mitch Barnett and Adam Fanua-Blake on the field. There's a massive drop-off there whenever those two aren't in the mixer in the middle. Other teams, they wrestle back momentum in a major way. They get on top of us, and then by the time they get their boarding passes back into the game, we seem to be chasing. Boy, do we get bloody close to running them down, but you can't have that, especially if we're going to go toe-to-toe with the best teams in the comp. I thought we played 40 minutes of good football. Got off to a hissing start, up 12-0 after 10 minutes. I thought we were going to put on a cricket score, but to then concede 27 unanswered points, that's not good enough against any team, let alone a team like the Titans. We finished with a hiss and a roar. That want to win from this team, the will to win, I should say, is clearly evident for all to see, but it was a bit of a hurdle too far for us to claw back, unfortunately, despite us having multiple opportunities to capitalise, score points, and make them pay. We just weren't clinical enough to get it done. I thought that Wade Egan knock on to the disallowed try to Roger Tuivasa-Sheck was bloody rough. I think if you slow down every play the ball in the game as much as they did for that one, get the magnifying glass out, I think you'll find that happens multiple times in games and goes unpunished. So that was a bloody Daryl toughie. Then that knock on in the air from Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. Dell himself, he doesn't think he touched it at all. Rocco dives on it. That could have been the game-winning meaty, but hey, we should have been better, so you can't blame solely the officials. There was another call which really pissed me off though, while I'm venting, getting things off my chest, and that was the HIA call for Big Mo Fotuaika. Of course, we marched down the paddock. Big Mo got knocked out. I think he copped a hip off Zion on one of his back fence carries. We roll down the field, get to our fifth tackle. We're in a hot position to attack, and I thought we were looking likely to strike. Referee blows her up. HIA kills all momentum. Surely he could have done it earlier or later, because I think we looked bloody good to score some points on that set. Speaking of scoring points, attack, it just wasn't up to it either. Lots of times our best red zone attacking option at the moment seems like it's SJ just kicking across the Dallin's wing, which is all good, but it just can't be our default option every time we get down there. For me, we're really missing some of Luke Metcalf's razzle at the moment, just someone with that ability to break up the structure, know when to go, show and go. Defenses have to be wary of him, can pull a rabbit out of a hat and make something out of nothing. We're almost so structured at the moment that opposition teams know what's coming before we throw it at them. So that is something we need to work on as well. Another work on for me is our bench rotation in the middle of the paddock. I touched on before how we lose the ruck whenever Adam and Mitchy Barnett go off. Interesting stat for you. We actually won the game 24 points to 10 in the minutes where AFB was on the park, which just shows how influential he is to this team. He was massive yet again, as was Barney, but while we're missing your Maratas, your Bunties, Onko, off the Rimu, who can really rough it up with the big boys, slow down the ruck, insert their size and their dominance in order to help benefit us and get our defensive line set, etc., etc., then I think Webby needs to mix things up a little, maybe stagger those substitutions. We can't have AFB and Barney both coming off at the same time. Interested to see if he mixes that up this weekend. That is certainly something I'll be keeping a close eye on. Full credit to the Titans though. They were desperate to get the dub. They played well the week before against Manly, and they lifted to another level for this game too. I thought Fafita was good. Jolliffe, what a name that is, and he lived up to that, played some great code. Brian Kelly, he looked like a bloody New South Wales Origin centre, one-on-one. You don't see Rocco get beat like that very often. Tanner Boyd, he clearly heard the critics coming for him over the last couple of weeks. He was grouse. And then Brimo made a big statement saying, I want to wear the one jersey for this team in the future. No more Jaden Campbell. Let me rip. He was outstanding for the Warriors. Zion, great off the bench. Absolutely loved witnessing his debut. A real glimpse into the future around this enforcer. He's going to be wearing that Warriors logo on his left tip for many years to come. 77 metres in 13 minutes, 39 PCMs off the back of 7 carries, 5 tackles and 0 missed. I feel like the energy really lifted when he came onto the park for his stint. Adam's second try, I reckon that came off the back of just his injection too. He had a massive carry, we got momentum off the back of it, then Big Dinny waltzes through. So well done to Zion. 20 years old from Kelston, has a massive future in the game, and he's going to become a real fan favourite too, because much like Bunty, he loves back fencing it. 0 handbrake, doesn't have that in his game at all, and he will fly into the biggest bodies on the paddock and make his presence felt. So well done to him, a long-awaited debut, and I really thought he lived up to the hype. Touched before on Adam, he was crazy good yet again. Like I said, 24-10 when he was on the park, got through 61 minutes, 2 tries, 217 run meters, 98 PCMs, 2 line breaks, 4 tackle breaks, and 27 tackles. What a footballer he is. Shit, is he going to be missed next year? The Sharks must be licking their lips watching him turn out these type of performances every week. And we do love us some AFB. I thought Dylan Walker was great. Geez, does he bring such an impact off the bench. We're grateful to have him back. Thought he controlled the middle really well. His ability to speed up and slow down when he's got ball in hand, change the tempo, makes him so bloody hard to tackle. And the fact as well, he's a bit of a smaller body through the middle, but he brings some fast feet, he brings some toughness, he just offers our attack something a little different, shows a different look at these defensive lines too. So it's great to have Walks in the mixer, and I think he's going to be massive for us over the next couple of weeks. And then I also wanted to shout out C&K, the workhorse. Mentioned last week he was averaging 287 metres per game since coming back from injury. Well, this week he went just above that yet again. Fuck, is he consistent. 289 run meters, 94 PCMs, a try, 4 tackle breaks, 0 errors on game 100. So shout out to our fullback. You can always count on him. Mr. Safe as houses. Finally, before we park this game, I just wanted to highlight a few of the positives from the season so far, because over the last couple of weeks, and this week in particular, there's been so much doom and gloom coming across my desk from Warriors fans who are starting to panic, whether they're bandwagoners or day ones, because of course expectation was that this year, off the back of last year, we'd once again be a top 4 side with a real chance to go all the way and bring us our first premiership. And we can't forget that last year the lads had a period where they went 4 losses from 5 games, and everyone started to jump off and weigh into them there too. So you got to ride the wave throughout the season in the NRL. She's such a tough competition. If you don't show up at 100%, anyone can beat anyone on their day. Here's my sprinkling of positivity, because you all know me. I'm forever an optimist, always glass half full, particularly when it comes to the Warriors. So after 8 rounds, we lead all teams for the most metres gained in the competition. We also have 1,000 more metres than the second best team in the comp. So we're putting teams to the sword, marching up the paddock week in and week out. We also lead the comp in the most runs per game and the most kick return metres. So that's great stuff. We're also top for most kicks, second for most total kick metres, first for the most decoy runs, which I think is really key to our attacking shape and structure. When we look our best is when we have our big boppers running hard, engaging downlines. That sets us off to play out the back of that type of shape. We're also third for the most post-contact meters in the comp. Love me a PCM, and we've racked up almost 5,000 of them. We're second for most line engage runs, which again leads to that attack shape and what it needs to be firing. We're second in the comp for completion rate, 82%. I love that. In order to compete, you have to complete, and we are doing that. Third equal for most tackle breaks, and we're also in the top 4 for possession per game. In terms of individual stats, AFB, he leads all players for the most post-contact contact meters in the comp, and he's actually third behind Dylan Edwards and Tom Trbojevic, two fullbacks, for the most total run meters in the comp, which is crazy stuff. AFB having a career year off the back of being named Prop of the Year last year. What a unit. Shawnee Johnson, he leads the comp in line engaged runs, line break assists, kick meters, kicks, and attacking kicks, and is second as well for most try assists. So chin up, Warriors fans. We're still watching a very good football side that is capable of going all the way and putting the best teams in the comp to the sword. Things have been glitchy. They haven't quite been firing yet, but off the back of a 10-day turnaround, 7 days on the training paddock, 3 days away, where the players could just go back home, refresh, and come back ready to rip in. I think we're going to see a different team this week, and it's got me licking my lips at the prospect of going over to Newcastle, getting a famous dub while Pong is still on the sideline, righting our wrongs and getting everyone back on the bandwagon before we go on a big 2-game stint all away as well. So this is bloody important. So this week we take on Newcastle in Newcastle. Not an easy place to go and get the win, but I think the boys will be feeling pretty good off the back of that long turnaround. Add to that, no one was more disappointed in not getting the win on ANZAC Day than the lads. They were stinging down in the dumps, really disappointed, felt like they'd let everyone down. So this week we bounce back, and we bounce back in a major way. 2 points all the way. In terms of your changes to the team, of course, just the one to the starting side with Curdy Capewell coming back into the mixer, and I think that'll help RD on our right edge as well too. A lot of the criticism around Kurt is that he hasn't quite lived up to the hype attack-wise anyway, but defensively, he's been huge for us. He's locked down. He's an effort play, always leads the chase lines, and doesn't get beaten one-on-one, so I think he's going to be massive in helping out Rocco and Dallin defensively on that edge. And on that too, I've seen a few people calling out Rocco and asking for his head, drop him down to reserve grade after a tough arvo on the weekend. He's been one of the best centres in the comp for me defensively this year. Didn't give him the nickname Bootlaceberry for no reason. He's had a couple tough days at the office against the Dragons and against the Titans, but he's a quality one-on-one defender, and I'm backing him to turn that around in a major way. Good to see Bunty come on to the Remu, bring some experience. Unfortunately, that means Zion drops out. I thought he might have done enough, Big Z, but we did miss Bunty's experience, his cool head, and his big frame on the weekend, and it's good to see him make such a quick return as well off the back of that hamstring niggle for the Knights. They line up as they did last week, 1-17, no real changes there. I thought Armstrong looked bloody good for them on debut at fullback. Jackson Hastings, he was up to his menacing best, perhaps taking on more of the playmaking role now that KP isn't out there. But on paper, we're by far the better squad. Newcastle at home, their fans show up in a major way. It's almost like the Mount Smart of Australia. But all that aside, I think we go over there and we do them. And I can't wait for this game, Sunday Arvo. She's going to be bloody good. Shout out as well to the Harold Matts team before I move on from the Warriors, of course, who won the comp, went all the way, went over to Aussie and won the damn thing, from finishing in 6th in the regular season to go on to lift the trophy. They did it the hard way too, beating the 3 best teams in the comp and all away from home. So what a result for the future of our club, our first premiership in 10 years, and shit where there's some talented youngsters in this team. Carwyn Patterson, Jack Thompson, Lennox Toiloma, Laban, those are just 4. You could roll out plenty more as well. Jack Thompson for me had a massive performance on the weekend, and shit is he an interesting story, and perhaps it could be a bit of a sign of the times too. He actually started the year, played the first 3 games I think it was for Newcastle before deciding to make the move over the ditch, wanted to be at the Wars. People want to be at our club now. Jet Cleary, case in point, that was a real testament to that. And with Jet, Thompson, and then Luke Hanson as well at our club next year, it's fair to say we've got some great young halves coming through the grades, and I'm excited to see how that sets us up in years to come. But well done to the club. First year in the comp, we win it. Already instant satisfaction that our Pathways program is going to deliver some great things, and we'll see many of these young lads progress into the top side in years to come. So can't bloody wait for that. In terms of your games this weekend, and there are some doozies, I'll highlight highlight a couple that I'm looking forward to watching the most. Tonight, got the Bunnies taking on the Panthers. Will the Bunnies rise for their coach, put in a big shift, or will the Panthers just be too good? I think the Panthers will be pretty disappointed with the performance they turned out last week against the Cowboys. Nathan, week 2 in the saddle after coming back from that hamstring, so I expect him to be much improved. I'll be jumping on the Panthers there. Friday night, Broncos Roosters, this is set to be an absolute doozy. Broncos, they got everyone back. Ezra Mann, Cobbo, Haas, Reynolds, they're good to go. The Roosters, I see Victor Radley named on an extended bench. Shit, will they want to get him back? But good to see Jared Waerea-Hargreaves line up for game 300. An absolute legend of that club and of the Kiwis, to be fair. And shit, will he be fired up to go out and make a statement. Broncos at Suncorp, I'll be backing them to take it home, but this has the potential to be a real lip licker, a repeat of the game in Vegas. Can't wait for that. Bums on seats clash for sure. Doggies vs Tigers, Super Saturday. Looking forward to that one. Been enjoying watching both of these teams play so far. Fair to say they're not the best teams in the comp, but they both play an exciting brand of footy, and on their day, they can beat anyone. Dogs in 8th. First time they've been in the top 8 since 2017, so that is good stuff. And then the Tigers, Lockie Galvin, if he's lacing up the boots, then I'll be watching. Interested to see if Api Kotesau plays too, because he looked a bit poked after last week. If he doesn't, you got to be on the Dogs all day to pull off a big dub. And then Super Sunday, you already know what the feature game is there. Knights vs Wars, already touched on it, but Sharks vs Dragons after it for the Shane Flanagan Cup, the old Far Cup you could call it. Flano straight away last week went at his old team, called them out in the presser, said they hadn't won shit since they got rid of him. Really ignited the fuel on the fire early doors, and I think there's going to be some fireworks in this one, so can't wait. Another huge round of NRL set to be dished up for us. Round 9, gonna be a doozy. Go get 'em the Wars, 2 points in the bank, and on we march, ready to pluck the Chooks next week, and then pit the Panthers at Magic Round the week after. How good is Rugby League? Time to talk some Rugby Union now, but before we do that, just quickly wanted to touch on the freak accident and the tragedy which occurred over the weekend in under 85s rugby. Unfortunately, Corey Heather lost his life as a result of a head knock, went into a coma and didn't come out of it. Tragic stuff for him, his family, his friends, his teammates. He had 3 young ones as well, and you hate to see things like this play out. So my thoughts, my condolences, and my love go out to Corey's family, friends, and everyone involved at his club, and that knew him personally as well. An incredibly sad story, and certainly one that brought a tear to my eye over the weekend once I heard the news. An absolute tragedy. But of course, Super Rugby continued to march last week. We had ANZAC round with the New Zealand sides taking on the Aussies, and then also the Fijian Drua hosting Moana. The biggest result would have to be the Canes finally picking up a loss. I said it was going to be a tough task for them on last week's pod to go from Fiji to Wellington and then to Canberra all in the space of 7 days, and I think we saw that travel take a toll on them too. They looked a bit flat, bit rusty at the start, came home with a wet sail, but by then the game was gone, and the Brumbies, they'd really got off to a big lead. Shout out to them as well. This is the same side that got held to a donut the week before, had 40 odd points put on them by the Blues, to then take on an undefeated and confident Hurricane side and come out on the right side of the ledger was a massive result for them. The Canberra curse, it continues for the lads from the capital. They haven't won there since 2017, so the Brums are certainly a bogey side for them. Arguably the biggest issue to arise from this too is their hooking stocks. They've now lost all 3 of their contracted hookers. James O'Reilly, he failed a concussion test, so he'll join Asafo Amoa and Jacob Devery on the sidelines. They're really starting to dig deep into their stocks now. Got the Tars this week, but no doubt they'll have an eye to that Blues game at Eden Park next weekend. They're going to need some bodies back on deck. O'Reilly, he might well be back by then, but perhaps a few chinks in the armour were exposed by the Brumbies on the weekend. So let's watch this space. The Blues, well done to them. Got the dub in a late thriller. They scored 2 tries in the last 5 minutes to get the result. Finished with a hiss and a roar, and what was a bloody entertaining game to watch, and they were probably lucky lucky to come away with the points in this one. I thought the Reds were really sharp. Takes a lot within a team to be able to come back and pull off a victory like this. And I think Blues sides of the past wouldn't have been capable of doing it. Vern Cotter, he's instilled a real toughness and a belief in this team, and it was on display yet again on the weekend. I thought Caleb Clark was unreal on the wing off the Remu, and I'm really enjoying watching this Cole Forbes players code as well. I didn't know much about the kid to start the year. We've seen him in the midfield, now we've seen him at fullback. He looks like a bloody handy footballer. Speaking of footballers too, and handy ones, Tim Ryan on the wing for the Reds, shut the gate, scored a hat-trick. The kid can play, he's got gas, he's got great feet, looks like one of those guys you give him the ball with nothing on, and he's got that unique ability to just create something from nothing, turn it into a try-scoring opportunity, and then he's got the skill set to convert it into 5 points. They cut a few times there to Joe Schmidt up in his coaching box. He had a massive grin on his face, another one for him to circle in his Wallabies black book, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do with that side in gold. I expect them to be much more competitive this year in the Rugby Championship, so let's watch this space. The Crusaders, well done to them. Just as I said I was about ready to put a line through them, they show up at home and pull off a 30-0 complete domination of the high-flying Rebels. They killed them at set piece, shifted that Crusaders pack front up. They didn't lose a line out on their own throw, and they just destroyed that Rebels scrum as well. Attack still looked a bit clunky, but their defence was massive improvement, conceding 0 points against a side like the Rebels, who were sitting in 4th and full of confidence. That is no easy feat. Your standouts for me, Johnny McNichol, could he be the best buy of the year? If you told me at the start of the year, I'll be singing Johnny McNichol's praises in Super Rugby, I would have told you you're off your head. But man, he looked outstanding at 15. We already know he's a great winger, so what a pickup he was. And shout out to Christian Leo Willie as well, who I thought was outstanding. One of these modern day number 8s, big body, athletic as shit though, grabbed himself a double. He's a great finisher out wide, and certainly one to circle for the future here in New Zealand rugby as well, as we continue to unearth just even more talent in the loose forward trio. I thought Scott Barrett was outstanding. His return to the team really did level them up, and you'd have to wonder as well just how big of an impact having Cody Taylor back in the environment, of course wasn't available for this game as he works his way back up to match fitness, but just having him around the paddock, I'm sure at training and whatnot, he's imparting his wisdom on some of these younger lads and filling them with confidence too, and I think this performance was a big result of that. Then the Chiefs, they got the dub in Sydney, 38 points to 22, in a game which did take a bit of a toll on the lads from the Waikato. Of course, friend of the show, Sean Stevenson, unfortunately he got sniped on his way to the try line, pulls up at the in goal, ready to do his token slide and then probably get the pistols out, but the hamstring, the old hamster, it went on him in the process. Good news though, could have been much worse. It appears he's only going to miss a couple weeks now, and he said it's pulling up quite good lately, so hopefully he won't be long off the paddock. And saying that, the Chiefs, they have some great depth out wide, in particular in that back line, so while he will be a massive loss, I still back them to continue this momentum and keep climbing up the ladder. Do I have to say, Samipeni Finau, Jesus, he turning into a first five's worst nightmare. Loves a shot on a 10. Some of them marginally late, perhaps you could argue, but this one was an absolute doozy, and he added young Waratah's first five, Edmund, to his list of bodies. Fair to say, doesn't like a 10 at all. Loves flatlining them, taking a few brain cells off them, and perhaps cracking a few ribs as well. That's now the Waratah's first five, Brumby's first five, Red's first five, and Moana first five that he has laid out this year. Notice a trend there with the Aussies too. Love that from Big Samipeni, but it's fair to say all the sixes coming through the New Zealand system. We so often hear he could be the next Jerome Kaino. That is the phrase thrown about. I think Samipeni is probably the closest we've seen to Big Jerome. Not saying he is him, but he has a few of his characteristics. He's tough, he's an enforcer, he doesn't miss on defense, and I think he has massive potential to really kick on. He's had a big year of Super Rugby, and I'm keen to see what Razor can do with him. But fair to say, if I'm a first five lining up against the Chiefs this week, I'm taking a couple steps back. I'm playing in the pocket, not engaging the line at all. I'm keeping my eyes up out the back of pod shape if you get the ball too. I'll be looking head on a swivel the whole time for Samipeni, and that is exactly what he's hoping to achieve. The big fella just laying out first fives left, right and centre. So a big round of Super Rugby, you love to see it, and it sets up another big round this weekend as well. Some good games, a couple that are really hard to call, but I'm keen to see how they play out. The first one, I think that's a shoo-in. I think we can bank the Canes in to bounce back in a major way at home at the Cake Tin and get the dub against the Tars. Rebels Blues, while on paper it may look like an easy shift for the Blues, I'm a little bit cautious of this one, to be honest, and I think we can refer back to that Brumbies-Canes game as a good case study as to why. We saw the Brums come over here, get towelled up, go back home and pull off the win. The Rebels, they came over here, they got licked within an inch of their life against the Crusaders. Now they get to go back home and try right their wrongs against the Blues. The Melbourne-based side, they've been bloody good at home so far this year, so they'll be keen to prove a point and really shoot for some redemption. When you look at the layout of the rest of their season too, 5 rounds to go, they've only got 2 home games, one against the Blues and one against the Chiefs. Then they take on the Reds, the Brumbies and the Fijian Drua, all on the road too. So if they go 0-5 in that stretch, I think you'll find they drop out of the top 8, and they certainly don't deserve that. They've been a good footy side this year. They need to bank these wins while they're at home, so I think we'll see a fired up Rebels side. At the same time, I've really come to trust this Blues team, and I do think they will be too good in what will be a tight contest. Moana taking on the Landers over in Tonga. Love to see this. For me, this is where Moana should be playing the majority of their games. We've seen it with the Fijian Drua, the success they've had ever since they've taken their games back to Fiji. For me, Moana, they need to be playing in Tonga, in Samoa, week in and week out, engaging their local communities and getting the support behind them. So I think this will pay big dividends for them. The Landers, they're up against it. Reece Patchell, the old poor man's Prince Harry, he's really battling at the moment, out with injury, and he's been one of their best. They had a 7-6 win against the Western Force. Didn't even touch on that result in my summary of last week because it was an absolute bore fest. So I'm backing Moana to get the win here in Tonga to celebrate their return. Great stuff there. Crusaders Reds, this will be a doozy. Saturday Arvo at home. If this game was in Brisbane, I'll probably be jumping on the Reds, but the Crusaders, they would have taken a lot from last week, and I think they'll win this one in a close game. Chiefs versus Force, I think cricket score, the Chiefs will be way too good. And then Brumbies versus Drua, I'm backing the Brums at home to come away with the treats there. So plenty going on in Super Rugby, and plenty going on in the world of rugby too. Just quickly, Billy Vunipola, what an absolute scene that sounds like. If you're unaware, of course, he's the England number 8. He's a big body, a large human, and he was tasered and arrested in a Spanish bar over the weekend. It's their off season at the moment. They're into their summer break, and clearly the England and Saracens number 8 decided to go run amok in Spain, and fair enough too. But apparently he was abusing police officers. He's been charged with resisting the law and assaulting an officer. Apparently took 2 tasers and 8 police officers to get the big fella to the ground. 4 a.m, so clearly he was up to no good, and as a result he's paid the price as well. A cheeky little €240 fine, and he's been given a bit of a slap on the wrist. He's now back in the UK, so clearly Spanish police, they aren't going to pursue this anymore. But Billy Vunipola making the most of his off-season. Maybe he's got a bit of rugby league in him. That's almost the scandal you more expect from the NRL. So great stuff there from the big English number 8. Weekly wrap time now, and I'll try rip through this one because we do have a big shift coming up on the Q&A. The questions have been coming in left, right and centre, and there's a couple NBA ones in there too, so I'll look to speed this up. NBA Finals though, well done to the Minnesota Timberwolves, who pulled off the sweep over the Phoenix Suns in a series which I thought was going to be tricky for them. The Suns, that had the wood on them all throughout the regular season, but Minnesota showed that come playoff times, none of that matters. They made the right adjustments, and shit did they look dominant. Anthony Edwards, what a player he is, a freak, a superstar already, but he has the potential to be one of the biggest names in the game ever if he can keep up this trajectory. Talked a lot of shit throughout the series and pre the series too, but man did he back it up. He was the best player on the court in a series which featured household names like your Devin Bookers, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Karl Anthony Towns. So well done to the kid. He's one of my favourite players to watch, loves putting people on a poster, got that ego but got the game to back it up too. And well done to Minnesota, who have now set up a mouth-watering clash with last year's champs, the old Denver Nuggets, who unfortunately put my side, the Lakers, away 4-1 in what was a bloody tough series, and one that I think the scoreline doesn't suggest just how difficult the Lakers made it for the Nuggets. But in the end, Jamal Murray, way too good. The Joker, just pulling the strings, looks like he's barely even trying, but man, is he so clinical. He's got so much time on the ball, tosses it up at the rim, and it just appears to drop in like it's something freakish, but he does it so regularly that you can tell it's an elite skill of his. His playmaking, his ability to pass and put his teammates in elite positions to do their job is second to none. And then you got Jamal Murray, who hit constant buzzer beaters throughout this series to ice games. The bloke is clutch despite having a fucked calf. Saw him in the warm-ups for that game 5, thought he was no way of having a massive impact on that game, but then right before the buzzer hits a cheeky little fadeaway like he did earlier in the series as well to see the Nuggets get the dub, get the win, and on they march. Shout out to the Thunder as well, who I believe became the youngest ever team to advance to the second round of the playoffs with a sweep over the Pelicans, led by SGA, who continues to show that he is a legit superstar. Now that the Lakers are gone, I'll be jumping on the Thunder bandwagon for sure. Hopefully I don't curse them and they can continue to get the job done and march on through. Then yesterday, with the Knicks going down to the Sixers in OT, well done to the Sixers. They were down by 5 or 6 with at least 20 seconds to go. Looked like it was game over, but Tyrese Maxey took over the game in a major way. Embiid, you can tell he's battling with his health, but Maxey just said, lads, jump on my back and I'll get us home. A bit of a choke job by the Knicks there down the stretch, but then Philly good enough to force OT and win it in extra time as well to extend that series. Now she goes back to Philly and then a potential game 7 back at Madison Square Garden. That would be unreal scenes. The Cavs, they got up in a tight one up against the Magic, 104-103 to secure their home court advantage and go up 3-2 in their series. Then you got the Boston Celtics. They're up 3-1 against the Miami Heat. No Porzingis for their game today, but I still think Boston should be too good against the walking wounded Heat side. If they can take this 5 or 6 game series, then that will get Boston fans incredibly nervous. Clips Mavs, that also goes down today. Looking forward to that. Heck of a series, that one. Plenty of bad blood being built between these two teams. You had PJ Washington swagging it out, then Paul George hitting that same celebration straight back to him in the next game when he went off. So that series, I think that could go right down to the wire and we see a game 7. And then as I speak, recording this on a Wednesday arvo as always, Bucks are taking on the Pacers. Bucks are actually up at halftime despite not having Dame or Giannis. Game is in Milwaukee though. Next one will go back to Indiana and I think they will get the job done there if they don't wrap it up in today's clash. So some great round 2 matchups already being set with that Nuggets and T-Wolves. That is going to be legit stuff, but still plenty to unfold in the first round, so stay tuned. And hopefully I can keep having some wins on the punt in your NBA too. You gotta love it. Shout out to the Wellington Phoenix. Of course, they got the dub on the weekend, 3-0. A huge win for them, which saw them move to the top of the ladder again. Recording this on Wednesday, Arvo, so I don't know what the outcome of tonight's game will be between the Central Coast Mariners and Adelaide United. If Adelaide can manage to pull off the dub, then that would be huge, and it would see the Phoenix win our first ever minor premiership. So by the time you're listening to this, you'll already know how that goes down, but I'll be watching that game tonight and having every limb on my body crossed that Adelaide can do us a favour, because shit would that be cool. And then finally, just quickly, shout out to the Black Caps, of course, T20 World Cup squad named, but I actually wanted to just touch on the kit. It's unreal. Heritage jerseys are certainly back in vogue this year. Warriors 95 kit, you got all the Super Rugby teams running out the Heritage too, and now the Black Caps, they've dusted off the teal, and they'll be wearing that at the T20 World Cup. Haven't bought a Black Caps jersey in about 10 years, but it's fair to say I'll be copping one of these bad boys, because that is a piece of artwork. Can't wait to be rocking that on my rig this summer. Get up, the mighty Caps. Let's rip into the questions that were fired through by all of you, the punters, the listeners, the STS community. The first one comes through, running for Sal, regular listener, regular question asker, and he says, name your All Blacks team if there was a game this weekend. So they have to be fit and New Zealand playing players only. And this is an interesting question because I saw on the breakdown they were talking about should rugby have an ANZAC test between the All Blacks and the Wallabies, a potential break in Super Rugby. Both teams get 1 week to assemble their squad, have some training sessions, and then they play the game. Personally, I'd be all for that. I think that's what Rugby Union needs, and it would add even more to the rivalry between the All Blacks and the Wallabies. So I'd love to see an ANZAC test go down in Rugby Union. I'd love to see one in Rugby League as well, to be fair. Unfortunately, they scrapped those. But in terms of my All Blacks team, if I had to name one today, fully healthy and ready to rip in at the back, you'd have to have Ruben Love. Probably would have had Shooter, but of course he won't be ready to lace up this weekend, so Rubes gets the gig. Then on the wings, Severis, think he's been elite coming back for the Crusaders. I've been singing his praise all year long. I'd have him and Mark Talea running the cutter out wide, two deadly strike weapons. I think they would run a mark in the midfield. Rico Ioane, Geordie Barrett, that long-established combination now, which we've come to know and love. In the 10 jersey, Damien McKenzie would run the cutter for me. Best 10 in the comp going round in Super Rugby. In the 9, I'd go with TJ Perenara. If Christie was available, might have gone with him and then TJ off the Rimu. But Christie, he's out for the Blues, so he's ineligible. Then I'd go Hoskins Satutu at 8. Kelly Dalton Papali'i at 7. Simapeni Finau, he would wear 6. Then I'd have Scotty Barrett at 5. Paddy Tui Polotu joining him in the locks with Lomax, Taukiaho and De Groot rounding out my front row. Then off the bench, you'd probably have to go with one of the Blues hookers at the moment. Of course, Cody Taylor, he's ineligible. Otherwise, you'd probably have him starting and Samasoni on the Rimu. But at the moment, for this exercise, probably have Kurt Eklund as my backup hooker. Fletcher Newell, him and Xavier Numea would be my backup props. Tupo Vai, he would be in the locking cover, and he can cover loose forwards as well, alongside Ethan Blackadder. Then in 21, Falau Fakatava. It would be a bit of a coin toss between him and Cortez Ratama, to be fair, but the fact Falau, he's already had a couple caps. I'd chuck him in as your halfback cover. David Havili in jersey 22. Would have said Perafeta, but again, he's injured. Davey, he can cover 10, 12, 15 centre. Probably chuck him on a wing too, so he's incredibly versatile. And then in the 23 jersey, I'd probably have Imoni Narawa, but at the same time, I think many would be going with Caleb Clark. He showed on the weekend the impact he can have off the bench. And to be fair to Caleb, he's had a great season already so far. Anton Leonard-Brown would probably be another name that you would toss up. He can cover wing if needed. We saw it in the Rugby World Cup. So that is probably my team. Be interested to hear your thoughts though. Fire through your All Black squads to me in the DMs. It's a bloody interesting exercise and it gives a little indication into the team we might have trotted out last weekend to take on the Wallabies if there was that All Black ANZAC game. While it's a little light on caps, there's plenty of new faces in there. It sounds like a bloody exciting team, and I'll be keen to see what Razor can do with them. The next one comes through from Travis Moody, another long-time listener, long-time question asker, and he says, pre-game in the sheds, do you rock the headphones? Do you write down notes? Do you joke around? Are you the serious guy? How are you? Pre-game. And to be fair, I like to think I'm a bit of a joker. I like to be quite light-hearted if you couldn't tell already. Certainly take my code seriously, do write down notes and things post-game that I can read over during the week, and I review a lot of footage as well on Huddle of both our game and the opposition team that we're going to take on that week. But when I rock up and around the lads, I like to keep things light-hearted, joke around, but then as soon as it comes time to switch on, I certainly do just that. In the sheds at the Coat, we have a big JBL boombox, so that's blasting out the sounds, but there are a lot of lads that rock their own headphones questions too. I love a bit of banter, so that's not for me, but each to their own. And I actually used to be a headphone operator, but I've come now to really enjoy that locker room environment and just having a yarn. So that's how I like to play things. Your next one comes through from Rocky, who says, if the Wars lose to the Knights, is that us done? Roosters, Panthers, Dolphins as our next 3 games. Look, I'll never say that we're done, but that's just the diehard Warriors fan in me, so you won't hear that statement ever come out of my mouth. At the same time though, like I touched on earlier, and as you just alluded to there is a pretty tough stretch of games coming up where the Warriors will really want to nail this one, because on paper, Newcastle appear to be the weaker of our next 3 games, that's for sure. Then we get Redcliffe back at home, so you'd like to circle that one as a win. At the same time though, knowing our luck, they'll probably have Herbie, Flegler, Hammer all back for that contest, which will make things a little tighter. But the Knights this week, we need to get the dub, and in my opinion, it does become a must-win game. Roosters at home, I'll always back us against the Chooks. They're a team that we always seem to rise to the occasion against. Then we've got the Panthers at Magic Round. I think it's fair to assume that we'll have the large majority of the fan base supporter-wise in that game, that's for sure. I'll be heading over there. If you're heading over to Magic Round yourself, feel free to let me know. Would love to catch up for a dozen better beers, a couple Darren Frothiers pre-game as well, and we will be at the Lord Alfred Hotel, as always, mixing and mingling with the Warriors fans. But yeah, very important we pick up the dub this week, and it's also important that we do it in a good manner, in that typical Warriors fashion that we've come to love over the last year or so. Clinical on attack, nailing our strikes and our shape, using our momentum to get us down there, and then executing in the red zone. And then on D, sticking our tackles, trusting our defenders, particularly out wide, and then through the middle, dominating the ruck, controlling the speed of the play of the ball, and asserting our dominance against a Newcastle pack that I certainly think we are better than, man for man. So can't wait to watch this game. The next question comes through from Nick, who says back 3 for the first All Blacks test. Similar to running for Sal's question, but I guess this allows me a little more wiggle room around guys who aren't available at the moment. So the only real change I would make there is that Shooter would come into the 15 jersey. So I'll go with Shooter, Sevu Reece, and Mark Talia as my back 3. In that mix, you get plenty of razzle. All 3 guys can split the game open at the drop of a hat. You get Shooter's big boot as well and a strong kicking game. I think that is a really well-rounded and complete back 3, but I'll be interested to hear your thoughts as well. Ruben Love would then drop onto the bench for me. He can cover 10 and 15, and he's too good of a footballer in too good form to miss out from the team completely. Caleb Williamson says, do you think the Warriors' defense and lack of being clinical has cost them over the last couple weeks? 100%, mate. We're missing too many tackles. You can tell the lads are low on confidence in that aspect of our game so far. I think it was exaggerated on the weekend without having Curdy Capewell on that right edge. And as a result, Rocco and Dell, they really felt the heat. But like I've been alluding to throughout this podcast, 10-day turnaround, 3 days away from the game, 7 days on the training paddock. I think we're going to see a different team that really goes back to basics, nails our roles defensively, controls the tempo of the game. And like you touched on, clinical, that hasn't been part of our attacking structure over the last couple of weeks. So I look forward to seeing that come back, because this team is certainly capable of making it happen, and I still have the faith 100%, and I hope you guys do too. Next one, NZ Warriors Faithful says Wolves in ... question mark. Diehard T-Wolves fan, and he's obviously talking about that Denver series, which is a real lip licker. To be honest, I think this game goes to 7. Not confident enough to make a call on which team wins it. I believe they met 4 times during the year, and it's split 2 apiece. I think both teams match up really nicely on each other as well. Denver, a bloody hard place to go and win, but if anyone can do that, it's probably an Ant-led team. He clearly doesn't give a shit about what anyone says or anything like that. He's going to rock up every night, do his thing, talk his smack, and then ball out, try back it up on the court. So I can't wait for this. The young, exciting talent up against the best player in the game at the moment in the Joker. Strap in. It's going to be huge. Gun to head, if I had to predict, I'd say Denver in 7, but I'll actually be cheering for the T-Wolves in this one, as much as it hurts me to say, because I love going against Old Faithful in his NBA takes, but we'll actually be riding the same waka in this series. So let's see how it plays out. And then finally, Even Jack Gardner says, do we need to drop one of our wingers, bring Pompey in and RTS to the wing? And it's good to see Adam Pompey getting a lot of love as of late, because last year he seemed to be the player that the fans were just well and truly off, despite him playing every game of the 2023 season. And maybe it's a bit of absence makes the heart grow fonder, and people are now starting to see what an asset Adam was to our squad at times. At the same time, do I think it's time to mix things up? Personally, I'm quite happy with Webby's pick and stick method, but I can see arguments for both. Roger, the time we've looked best this season with him is when he was out on the wing against the Bunnies. Of course, Adam Pompey was at centre that day, so I can see why people are bringing up the question. And to be fair, Marcelo Montoya, he hasn't exactly been at the top of his game over the last couple of weeks. At the same time, though, and I think I mentioned this quite a lot, I don't think people see how much of an asset and how big of an impact Marcelo has on this team on and off the field. He's a genuine leader. He's one of those guys, raises the energy of the team, gets around everyone. If someone makes a good play, whether it be Dallin on the far wing, Marcelo is always sprinting in, one of the first to congratulate him. And you may be sitting at home listening thinking, Surly mate, that doesn't have a big impact on the performance, but 100% it does. And I think if you ask the players, do they want Mars in the team, then most of them, the majority, 99%, would say absolutely. So I think Webby, he sees the bigger picture more than us. He's with these guys almost 24/7. He knows what's going on. So in Webby we trust, and I'm happy to see the same 17 almost get a shot, the same starting wingers anyway, get a shot at redemption for the last couple weeks. If things continue to decline, then absolutely we have some great options waiting in the wings, and Adam Pompey is one of them. So let's see how this week plays out before we start running some more hypotheticals. I do think though, if we continue to drop games, then something's got to change, and Webby will be the man to make that call. But as always, really appreciate all your questions. Unfortunately, don't have time to rip into all of them. Got a pretty busy day ahead, but really appreciate them. Cheers for firing them in. And if your question missed out this week, be sure to chuck it through next week, and I'll make sure I get around to it. The People's segment, she's always a popular one. Jump on the tea and biscuits, fire up the new TAB app, because she's time to have a punt. Had some great wins last week, a couple donations too, but as I touched on in the intro, we're 100% now on the new platform. One multi down and she was all green ticks, so fingers crossed I'm in some form. This new app really agrees with my punting methods, and we can continue on from there. We'll kick her off with the NRL as we always do, and of course tonight's game, Panthers taking on the Bunnies. The Panthers, despite being on the road, they're clear favourites, and deservedly so at $1.15. The Bunnies, massive outsiders at $5.20. The line is 15.5. Will the Bunnies lift for their new coach and Ben Hornby, or will the Panthers just be too good? For me, it's the second of those options. I would be moving Jackie White into 6, Cody Walker to 7 if I was Ben Hornby, and maybe then I'd give them a little more of a chance. But I think another week back in the saddle for Nathan Cleary. Panthers, they'll be disappointed with the shift they turned out last week, so I think they will bounce back in a major way. Some stats for you. The Bunnies have only won 1 of their last 6 games against the Panthers, and the Panthers have actually won 10 of their last 12 games at Accor Stadium. The Rabbitohs, they're conceding an average of 36 points per game this year. Their D has been horseshit. Brian To'o, he scored 10 tries in 10 games at Accor Stadium, and Taruva, he scored 5 tries in his last 6 contests. So I'm backing the Panthers here to get the dub, and I'll be chucking Taruva in my anytime try scorers. Build a same game around them, maybe Brian To'o in the mixer as well. If it misses by 1 on a 3-leg same gamer, you get your money back as bonus cash up to $50. Then Friday night, Full Fizz Friday, 2 great games. Manly Gulls taking on the Raiders, and the Broncos taking on the Roosters. For Manly, DCE, the People's Neck, he is free to play. If he wasn't, then maybe he would have given the Raiders an outside chance. Of course, the Gulls, they're also missing Hamole Olakauatu too, who will be a big loss. But I think at home against the Raiders side, fresh off a humping, Ricky Stewart, he's waved the axe and made a few cuts, but still, I think Manly will just be too strong. The They've won 3 of their last 4 games against the Raiders, and the Raiders have conceded 72 points in their past 2 games. They are down in the dumps. So Manly into the submarine. Jason Saab for me from this game. Broncos versus Roosters. This is going to be a doozy. $1.50 for the Bronx, $2.60 for the Chooks. All the big dogs are back for the Broncos, and they've done bloody well to play the way they have without having guys like Payne Haas, Reynolds, Ezra Mam, Selwyn Cobbo over that last month or so. For me, the key to this game, though, is in the extended bench for the Chooks. If Victor Radley and Satili Tupanua can get out onto the paddock, then I give them every bit of chance. Add to that, JWH, 300th game, he will be fizzing at the bung to rip into the Broncos. For me, though, at the moment, I'll be backing the boys from Brizzy. They've won their past 6 straight at Suncorp. The Roosters, though, historically, they've had the wood on the Broncos recently. They've won 4 out of their last 5, so this sets up a bloody good game. I'm going Broncos into Mariner for a cheeky little multi in this one. Dogs taking on the Tigers on your Super Saturday. Looking forward to this game. As I touched on in your NRL segment, I like seeing Kurt Mann named at lock, and good to see Jacob Preston on the extended bench too. Joshy Curran in the middle, ready to put his body through another big shift with that beautiful trademark headgear of his, which you can buy now, by the way, so make sure you go and cop one. Api Carousel named to play. That is key for me. I don't think he will. Look like he was really battling, so if he's a late scratching there, then I think the doggies will do this one. The Dogs, they've won 3 of their last 4 games against the Tigers. The Tigers have lost their last 9 straight at a core, and they haven't beaten the Dogs there since 2018. So history, stats, and current form suggest Doggies to get the win, and I like Jacob Kiraz to get the wing up against Solomon Alaimalo. I think he's going to teach him a bit of a lesson in playing rugby league at first grade and dot down for a meaty. Titans versus Storm. Storm win and win well for me. Munster's 200th, Christian Welsh's 150th. They've won 9 of their last 10 against the Gold Coast. Titans, they'll be up and about after that big result last week, and they'll be feeling confident, but I just think Melbourne at the moment firing on all cylinders, and you'd be silly not to snap them up. Even at $1.22, they're short favourites, but deservedly so. And I'll be jumping on Munster as well. Game 200, scored a meaty last week. Looks like he's back in peak form. Milestone bet, Mad Dog money, 200. Chuck him down for some meat. Cowboys versus Dolphins. Few bodies back for the Finns. Old Finn Diesel, he's back. Connolly Lumelu, he returns as well. Still no Herbie, Hammer, or Flegler though. So I think the Cows in Townsville will just be too good. Keen to see how Viliami Vailea goes as well. Of course, ex-Warrior, making his Cowboy debut in the centres. So hopefully he goes good guns. The Dolphins, they've only won 1 of their last 4 Queensland derbies. And Cowboys winger Kyle Felt, he scored 4 tries in his last 3 games against the lads from Redcliffe. So Cows into Felt is where I will be directing my cash. Knights, $2.30 up against the Warriors, $1.62 to kick off your Super Sunday. We win here, we win well, everyone back on the wagon. She's happy days, sunshine and rainbows out at Mount Smart. Newcastle, not an easy place to go, but we've actually had the wood over these guys. Won the last 2 straight, looking to make it 3 on the bounce, and I throw that stat in there because the next few stats I'm about to read are slightly concerning, a little bit depressing, but we ignore them as we so often do. We haven't beat the Knights in Newcastle since 2019, and they've won their last 9 straight Sunday afternoon games at home. Knights winger Greg Marju, he scored 5 tries in 4 games against the Warriors, and despite what you just heard, I'm going the Warriors into Dallin. Why not? Up the mighty Waz, and we get the job done. She's going to be back to usual programming, and despite the fact they've cost us a couple multis over the last few weeks, we reinvest and go again. And then Sharkies versus Dragons. The Shane Flanagan Cup is the last game for your round 9. Sharks $1.22, Dragons $4.25. The Sharks have won their last 7 straight against the Dragons. The Dragons, they haven't won at PointsBet Stadium since 2018. Ronaldo Mulatalo, he scored 30 tries in 28 games at PointsBet. Sharks sitting in first, haven't exactly played the best teams in the comp yet, but you wouldn't chuck the Dragons in that category. So I do think the Sharkies win here. I don't expect it to be the 60-point drubbing we saw the Chooks pull on the Drags last weekend. I do think they will lift a little for this one, but I still think the lads from Cronulla will be too sharp. So I'm going Sharkies into Ronaldo for a cheeky little multi there. In terms of your best bets for the NRL this weekend, I'll be chucking together a nice little multi, a kitty builder on the Panthers alternative line, -3.5. I'll be jumping on the Storm line, and I'll also be getting on the Warriors head-to-head. Chuck those together, $2.75. It's not going to pay off the mortgage, but it'll certainly keep you in the green. Give you a bit of a play money as well for next week. Stop your reinvesting, which is always a dub. For your Super Rugby, I like the Canes to win and win well up against the Tars, 13+. Go get on board. I like Moana against the Landers, like I've touched on there. I think they'll be too strong in Tonga. I like the Crusaders to get the win, head-to-head up against the Reds at home. Do think it will be a tight game though, so you could go 1-12 if you want to extract a little more value out of that one. Brumbies, expect them to be too strong at home against the Fijian and Drua. If it was over in Fiji, you'd maybe give them a puncher's chance or back them in on the line, but I do think Brumbies 13+ is probably the way to go here. Chiefs, they're going to pump the force, 13+, pencil it in. And I do like the Blues, who will not lose up against the Rebels, but bet with caution on that one. If you're not quite sure, then maybe leave it off your bet slip. So my multi for this week in your Super Rugby, I've gone Canes 13+, into Moana, into the Crusaders head-to-head, into the Brums head-to-head, and the Chiefs 13+, $4.30. Really don't mind that at all. And of course, under that oval ball mega multi-buster, because she's 4+ legs, if it misses by one, I'll get my money back as some bonus cash too, which you can now split up and spend however you like. Another great new feature. So she's win-win really. We chase it, a big swing, try pull off the win. If we miss, we've got that insurance, miss by one, bonus cash, and off we go again. Then on your NBA, of course, we've got some games going down today. I can only really speak on the Thursday clashes, to be fair. We've actually got options for the Friday game too, so I instantly take that back. We've got Boston taking on Miami in Boston. No Porzingis, but the Celtics should still be way too good. $1.08, probably not that lucrative, but in the points and player markets is where you'll look to sniff out some jam. Go Tatum, 20+ points, or Jaylen Brown, 20+ points. Hard to miss on those two. Clippers versus Mavericks. This one's going to be interesting. Clips at home, underdogs 2.25, Dallas $1.67. This series for me goes right down to the wire. So if you're an LA fan and you think Clippers can get it done in front of a vocal home crowd, then $2.25 is some great jam there. Dallas, they'll be fired up for this one. I think Luke is really going to rise to the occasion. So for me, I'd be looking at that alternative point start for this one, teasing the Clips out to a nice little line of say a +8 to +10 range, extracting about $1.50 of the best, chucking her in a multi, and just trying to get a nice little tick for what should be a close one. And then Sixers taking on the Knicks. Philly back at home, $1.62 favourites. New York, $2.35. Embiid, he didn't look amazingly healthy, but Philly, tough place to go and get a road dub. So I think the Sixers will be fired up to take this one to Game 7 and take it back to New York. So I'm going to chuck them on at $1.62. Again, the same method of thinking could come in though, where you tease the Knicks out to quite a big point start, try player safe, bank it's going to be a tight game, which I think it will be, and then you still get a tick at slightly lesser odds, but you get the insurance of the point start. I'm sure you well and truly know how it works. For your bet of the week, I'm 8 from 12 on these. Had the Warriors to get the win and Valanciunas to rack up plenty of rebounds. He did that. Of course, the Warriors let me down, so that hurt a little. This week, I'm going the Warriors and the Storm, chucking them both in at $1.98, almost $2. And for your best bet of the week, those are the type of odds we're aiming for. A cheeky little double up, and hopefully we can get back on the winner's circle for these. And the Warriors, they can salute for all of the punters. So that's another week for us on the punt. Fingers crossed there were some tips in there which really tickled your fancy. Remember, download the TAB app, do the refresher if you haven't already so you can get amongst the new platform. There's promos galore. Make sure you head along to the Punters Lounge, jump on the app, take your time, have a good look around. It can be overwhelming at the start. Change is always hard, but I think you'll find after you spend a bit of time, you'll really come to enjoy it. She's a great little upgrade in my humble opinion. So good luck on the punt this weekend. Hopefully you get plenty of winners and the account is sitting pretty, the old balance come the end of the weekend, because that is why we do it. Ticks on slips, and good luck if you're having a flutter on the old Carmichael punt. That's all she wrote for another episode of Surly Talk Sports. Up the mighty coat this weekend, heading up to the Ville. Not a bus trip, unfortunately, just a bit of a carpool situation. The team funds are getting quite low after a couple big functions over the last few weeks. So hopefully we can go up there on the road, nice little country footy club, and pick up the 5 points, because geez, do we need a big win. Shout out to the Warriors, going to get the job done in Newey on Sunday. You just got to keep saying it, talking it into existence so that it happens. Super Rugby, she's all go. NBA playoffs, the work. So plenty to sink the teeth into. Hope you enjoy all the sporting action, and I'll catch you back here, same time, same place next week to chew the fat and talk all things latest and greatest in the world of sport. How good? Go well. Enjoy the weekend. Stay safe. Big Fizz.